Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of Elite FTS for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it. Now, onto the show.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. This will be the best intro we ever had because we can see it and hear it.
We're running out of senses. No,
yeah, it only took like 8 dozen, but we could. Yeah, that was good.
So this is episode 81 of this. 81. For those who don't know, or for those who caught the live last time, that was episode 79. That means we did an episode that did not go live, that we just put it up on our podcast platform. So again, we had this message before. If you are not subscribed to that, make sure you do that. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get podcasts, you can get this. So this is week 2 of Better Than Black Friday, right? Yeah. We got all the sales going on, all the good deals. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to start off with looking at that new sweatshirt you got there.
A limited edition hoodie.
Edition hoodie.
Since we use the podcast now to pimp out all the limited edition stuff.
Yep.
The limited edition hood is on the site now. It's the banners at the top. We call those heroes.
Yep.
I believe it's Hero 3. And it is like the other. What was last? The flannel?
The flannel. That sold out within the time that we did the podcast.
Yeah, we didn't order enough of that.
Yeah. Learning process.
For those that missed out, we do have more ordered, but they won't be red. They'll be black.
Yep.
Supply chain issues with red. It's kind of like everything now.
Yeah.
I don't know when they'll be here, but we're going to do that again. And we ordered a little bit more. With these hoods, unfortunately, we didn't increase the order count. Mm-hmm. So the Grow hood is a concept that a lot of these, it's weird because we have novelty shirts, and I don't know what else to really call them. We have the limited line, then we have the other line, the line that we make in-house. The limited line is higher quality and obviously limited. So they're one and done with that, unless it's a flannel, but it's a different color.
Right.
And it's hard to kind of figure out which is going to go where on the novelty line, the ammo can design's doing really well. So it's like, fuck, maybe we should have made it that limited one, but maybe not, because it's doing better there. But some of the things with the limited line is we have to contract them out of house because the printing of these, those, whatever you want to call it, whatever pronoun I'm supposed to use for OD hoods. I don't know. I don't keep up with those type of things, but yeah, I said it. Fuck it. Whatever. But anyhow, their hoods. Their hoods. Their hoods. Yeah. Right? That's how I grew up, right? Them their
hoods.
And with a lot of ain't. Ain't them their hoods nice? I can just keep going with this shit if you want. Anyhow, we can't do a lot of the limited type stuff in-house, so we contract those out. With the Grow hood, this one here that's available now, Ken and I play around with different designs and different concepts and different ideas, and he'll come up with one. And what I really liked about this one is on the back. On the podcast,
for the
close
visual.
Your eyes.
Now imagine.
Yeah, if you're on the podcast, just close your eyes and imagine what a tree looks like if you cut it and looked at the rings. But on the Grow rings, it says live, learn, pass on within the rings, which is a pretty cool concept. So the limited stuff and the signature stuff, whatever that, I want a concept behind it.
Yeah.
So it has a little bit more meaning. So when people invest, say not buy, invest, because it's an investment, then they know it's different, it's special, so more thought kind of goes into it. So with the front, it's got the roots, You need to have roots to be able to grow, right? Grow, tree rings, there you go. You wrote really good copy for it. So what's your thoughts on tree rings?
Yeah, see, when I was kind of jumping into that a little bit, I had to do I'm not a botanist by any means, but I've seen tree rings, and one of the first things that you notice is some are thicker and some are thinner and some are, kind of different sized. And I was researching that, and obviously some seasons are harder than others. Some seasons are easier than others. The weather is different. The climate's different. It varies from year to year, but you can see that growth tracked. You can actually look back and see the thickness of the ring. It was a harder winter. That was somewhere where, there was more hardship, and it was colder. It was not as easy as some other years where you see like a really thin line. And I think that's what I like the most about this hoodie is like we get to see in terms of coaching, in terms of training, in terms of all kind of facets of what that we kind of touch on. You kind of follow that same pattern, right? Like every year there's a chance for you to grow, develop, but it only comes at a cost of comfort. It comes at a cost of experience. It comes at a cost of, difficulty. And the years that you grow the most are the years that are the toughest. Right. And I thought that was like a cool thing to run with, because it's so true. Is like you can look back after, years and years of business, but also training, and say, wow, the years that really tested me the most, I came out of it with new skills, with new habits, with new kind of a thought process on how things work. And most of the time when you see a year that's got this really thick ring, the next one isn't nearly as hard. Right.
Yes,
it was an easier year. And it made me think like that growth from the more difficult time helped you produce better results the next year. Right.
Well, the funny background story with this is when we started talking more about the design, then same as yourself, I did a little bit of Googling. I don't know if I want to say research per se, but Googling.
New age.
It depends upon, is it a degree in exercise science research probably means a little bit something different to me, and then a Google search. But I don't want to get caught up in the nuances of that conversation, because it is kind of stupid. Yeah. Where I'm going back and forth. I'm like, okay, we got 22 years. That's 22 rings. And Ken's like, oh, hey, now let's just, we only got so much room to work with. Right. And then, because that was kind of the original thought, was let's go through each one of these 22 years, and I know which ones, were weathered, which ones are thick, which ones, will have, because they're not all symmetrical, the rings. Some of it, one of the seasons is worse, or there's a fire and it will be more calloused on that area. So there's fire. There's always shit going on, but
it's just the size
there's
of the
like
fire.
4 years, that'd be one ring, and, that kind of stuff. And that becomes then a graphic design nightmare, because you still want to have the words in the rings. And now there's 22. And then it becomes a copy nightmare, because you're really going to sit there and write and does anybody give a fuck, the history of the whole thing. It's like tree rings grow, cool, perfect, roots. Right. Getting it, And with all the limited items, because the limited and the signature are kind of the same thing. The limited items, they're support the podcast. So that's, we keep bringing more in, because that's the way that y'all can support what we're doing here with the podcast.
And what's really cool is that it's an ability for us to kind of have a different direction with the things that we bring in too. It's almost like an experimental kind of strategy to determining like, okay, well, if this sold really well, maybe we can offshoot something like that for more, for the regular style that we usually bring in. But it's cool that and I'm sure there's a lot of people that like the story behind the design, the story behind how everything's selected and that process. That's the coolest part of the signature in the limited line, is because every piece we bring in, there's a reason for it, right? It's not just random, right? It's not just, all right, pick a material, pick a logo, and just like shooting shit at a wall. There is that story. There is that kind of.
There kind of is a little bit
to some extent.
To some extent, it's like, well, hey, what garment do you?
Well,
have?
right, for sure. But there has to be that level of our own personal spin on it to make it something that kind of fits the overall messaging of everything going on.
Yes, and it is. to harp on the limited thing, I mean, we're not a giant company, so the limited, there's under 100 total pieces. So when somebody gets this, they're going to be one of 100 or less that's going to have it, and then no one else is ever going to get it again. So it's done.
Yeah, and like I want to make a point of this, that whoever got one of the original flannels, you beat out Juji Mufu and like a lot of our people that were like, oh shit, I didn't even see that. Like it's really, really limited.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a cool thing to be kind of part of that and to be able to have like the first run of anything. But to kind of shift gears but along the lines of that growth, I have to say that this weekend was the worst training weekend I've had in a while. I got my ass kicked. Do we want to explain how this Circumax? We've already kind of gone into that a little bit, but just to kind of explain what the weekend was from your perspective, because I don't think I've gotten my ass kicked that bad.
Well, you build, ever. I mean, it's the Circumax. It's not something for everybody. That's the first thing. If it wasn't for Adam, you wouldn't be doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So that needs to be put out there. And it is exactly what it means. It's a Circumax. So whatever your maximum is, it's close to that at the top. So there was 2 weeks of getting acclimated to the band tension first, and then last Saturday was the first of 2 Circumax weeks, and they're brutal. And so it's an acclimation thing with that as well. So the second week usually isn't as bad as the first one, because the first one is kind of like the first week of when you did the bands the first time. So you go from no bands to 200 pound of band tension. This time you go from 200 pound of band tension to 400 pound of band tension.
Yeah.
So it's an oh fuck.
Yeah.
And that's where that accumulation comes from. The adaptation that we're looking for is to be able to, it's a monolift, so it's a pick, to be able to pick, with strength, to be able to get tight with strength, and then to be able to stay tight throughout. I want to say the entire lift, but that's not necessarily true, because the band tension comes off at the bottom. So what the Circumax is basically allowing you to do, if you take away the band tension, stretch, really flex, all the accommodating resistance stuff, just take all that away for a minute. What we're doing here is we're allowing the organism, we're allowing you guys to...
It felt like a fucking organism.
Yeah, we're allowing you guys to adapt to that high load, Circumax load, the peak phase weight at the top, while eliminating that your head's going to blow off at the very bottom. So in a way, you're able to take what may normally be 3 weeks of a peak that you would typically get in other different training cycles, programs, blocks, usually it's a peak is going to be around the real heavy 90% peak, 100, right? 90, 95, 9500, right in there. It's going to usually 3 weeks that's a fucking lot. We can extend that just a little bit because we're taking a lot of that harsh tension out of the bottom, where that's, for a lot of people, multiply, it's more of a factor because the compression of all the gear makes your head feel like it's going to pop off. So that's a lot for people to have to get used to if they're not used to it, because you also feel like you have a lot of weight on your back when you take it out. So there's 2 things. You take it out like, oh shit, this is heavy as fuck. Then you start going down. Like, I don't understand, why is my head going to pop off? It doesn't want to do that when it's raw.
Yeah.
So then there's the 2 things. So what I like about, and why I kind of put you in with Adam on this, is we can separate that a little bit. So now let's get used to this top thing, not worry too much about that bottom. And then the other thing is to drive all the way through the lift, where multiply if the gear is fitting right. Yours is really big, by the way. If it's fitting right, it's going to kickstart you out of the bottom, and then you have to catch. You can't catch it. You have to have it before it hits.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So the bands are one of those, especially at these tensions. If you don't hit it immediately coming out of the bottom, and I don't necessarily want to say whole. You're not going 4 inches below parallel.
Right.
But if you don't get it right out of the bottom, it's going to get you as soon as it starts getting back up. So it trains that attribute as well. So that was the first week. So, but a lot of it was, yes, it's going to kick your ass. And, you know, I mean, you guys are all aware of that. So you look at different ways throughout the training that you can pull things out to allow for the recovery demands that are needed, because you can only train to what your body's able to recover from. Right.
That's correct.
So a lot of things have to come out that will slowly come back in as we move out of that phase for this to happen, because the shit gets kicked out of you. But keep in mind, you made the lift after the one that you missed, right? So that's not a strength issue. It's not a motivation issue. It's just that acclimation issue. It's why you're doing Circumax.
Right.
Which is the frustrating part, especially the first times that you're going through. You know, on the other hand, with, you know, Adam, he's getting better, you know, every single week with that. But he's getting the shit kicked out of him too.
Yeah.
So that's what your experience with that, just the shoulder and just the compression part, is exactly why I don't like it. Because there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off with whenever you peak, no matter how you peak. There's always a trade-off. Don't let anybody fucking lie to you. There's always some trade-off. But what is it going to be? And who's it going to be? And what's going to be the return of that trade-off? To where this is not abnormal. You know, it just sucks. It's just, it's part of it. So if it wasn't this peak and it was a different type of peak, there would still be some trade-off. Maybe it's not going to be the shoulders, biceps tendons, but maybe it's going to be the lower back. Maybe it's going to be the lower back pump. Maybe it's nothing and you're just lucky, but I've never seen it. And if I've seen it, then it's only because they're intermediate to beginner and they're not actually handling the weights or the loads that they're capable of handling, because their technique is breaking before they can display their true strength.
Yeah. And it's funny with the bands specifically. I've used bands in the past, but I've never used it up to this tension. And I mean, granted, I'm also squatting with somebody that's 4'11", so that does that changes things too. But it is funny, even not this past weekend, the weekend before, that was when we were more accustomed to that level of band tension, right? And it was amazing. It was like my technique got better overnight because I was just accommodated to that tension, to that feel. And I was like, oh shit, like the week before and that week, it was night and day. So I think it is that learning process. There's a certain amount of accommodation that happens to your body that you have no control over.
Yes.
But the fact of the matter is you have to get under that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
adaptation,
right?
Right.
So keep in mind that, you know, if you look at what the last weight was and what the last weight will be this week, which is like 20 pounds more, the weight's higher than the first time through, which was hard. The first week of the first time through was hard. And this weight last week was harder or heavier with twice as much band tension.
Well, right.
So with 200 more pounds of band tension at the top, maybe a little bit more for you. So that, just if you want to think of the accommodation that's happening, the adaptation that's taking place. Obviously it's taking place. It's 200 pounds more in band tension and probably 30, 40 pounds more in bar weight.
Yeah.
Moving better relatively than the first week.
For sure.
Of what that was. So that now where the debate comes in, that's great, that's fine, that's dandy, but how is this going to have correspondence to a meet? That's where it gets tricky. You know, that's where, okay, there's one, I think there's one or two, I'm not looking at the wall right now, but there's I think 2 weeks without any band tension. So getting more acclimated to the straight weight again. It's coming in there. That's to allow that, I just said the word 3 times, the accommodation, the adaptation to take place to allow you to begin grounding again, because the bands can ground you, especially with a lot of band tension. So in a way, it's like you got 2 more legs. Yeah.
It's a massively different feel. And one of the things I wanted to go over with you is obviously you've trained for a very long time and you've done a lot of meets, and hey, I experienced it this weekend, even Strongman. Like, there wasn't a point where I'm like, God, I have zero fucking idea what to do now. Right. Like I was always kind of progressing. This weekend, I lost my shit because I was like, I have no fucking idea. Like my brain went somewhere else. Like my brain went out of my ass as soon as I got into that bar, and I was just listening to the words you were saying, and that was the only fucking thing getting me through that, because there was no thinking. I told Adam, I was like, this feels like a fist fight. Yes. Every single rep here, it feels like a fist fight. It feels like you're just getting the shit beat out of you over and over and over. And to not hit the rep, it's like, fuck, let's just have this thing crush me, because
well, that's going back to a podcast that was several ago. It's skill acquisition.
Yep.
You know, is you have to be able to know that skill is going to be there when your brain takes out or your brain goes out your asshole.
Yeah.
So if your brain goes out your asshole, how much skill acquisition is going to be maintained, right? To be able to move the weight.
Yeah.
And that's something that we would need to determine as well, because that same experience will be more enhanced in a meet than it is in training. So if it wasn't there for one rep that missed, but then came back for the rep that didn't miss, then we got to make that there for all reps,
right?
Which is what the next, because that's that acquisition that we're talking about. That's almost unconscious acquisition or subconscious, however you want to explain that. It's just natural that happens. This is another reason for a Circumax. I hate promoting it, because you get a bunch of intermediates and beginners like, I need to do a Circumax. It's like, no, you don't. Your technique fucking blows.
Yeah.
You can't fucking do it. They just can't. You know, everything has a time and a place. And I've hated this whole Circumax shit for years and years because of this. You tell somebody you're not ready for this, it's like, well, the fuck, and it's a challenge.
It's like that's not what it is. Yeah.
It's not. And it's I hate talking about it just for that reason.
Right.
And as I said before, I wouldn't have done it except Adam really wanted, and I know we talked before why it's working and why he wanted to do it, because it does build an inherent weak point that he has. It's a structural and muscular, it's a weak point that's never going to go away for him. It's always going to happen with every meet that he peaks for. That upper back's just going to become an issue every single time. And I can say that because the level he's at, how long he's been doing it, it's always there. So the way that you avoid it is know it's going to be there.
Right.
And then don't let it become that. You know, and this is how in the past he was able to overcome that. And it's also why it was more difficult, you know, with other training cycles to try to overcome it. Now I go back like, fuck, this is all this is all we had to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'd be Circumax, but I would introduce the bands in a phase before.
For sure.
Before a peak phase, which would probably be more conducive.
Yeah, I mean, even to see it, it's like, whoa, like he'll look shaky on a rep, and then you add another fucking 200 pounds of band tension, and all of a sudden he looks rock solid. It's like, holy shit, man. Like this, it's crazy. He responds so well to this shit, and I get to see it week to week. So as a coach on this side of things, it's like, oh, okay, I'm understanding the nuanced approach to this.
Yes.
But as the one doing it, I'm like, this is fucking stupid.
Yes, but what he has to master is the front end of the training cycle, of the meet training cycle. Say he needs to master,
it's like a prep phase,
the first 6 weeks of the prep phase, when his hips are unstable, when that mentally and technically has to be done with the same intent, not from an aggressive standpoint,
right?
Just from as these weeks are, because those inherently, when you look at them in comparison to what these are, take strength out of the equation. So, you know, you're going to get stronger through a training cycle, but let's just look at the intent. Let's just look at everything, the rest periods, look at all of it.
Yep.
And then look at that compared to the start. And then think, what if the start was done with that same intent? Where would it be now? So that's where his global weak point is, you know. So after the meet, there's the decompressing, you know, bodybuilding, all that other kind of stuff. But then, you know, next time getting back into whatever that next meet is, the focus is going to be way, way harder on the front half than the second half, because that's normally not the case. Normally you're going to say within a lifter at his level that's been doing it as long as he is, the intent of every rep is pretty much always the same, but it's not there yet, right? Which also tells me that there's a whole nother level that he can go to that he doesn't know about yet. So,
well, I even just from what I've seen training with him is like, oh, if his off season was a little bit longer, he could work on a few extra things. And but his mentality is he's such a competitor that he's like, when's the next one?
Yeah, well, he's going to have an off season that he's not going to like.
Right.
You know, so that's just, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody likes my 8 weeks of no bar on your back or in your hands rule. So we'll see how exactly that goes.
Yeah, and that's such a big factor and I think if most people are listening to this or watching this are that beginner or intermediate level and they're like, oh yeah, my off season's like a month and then I do whatever. It's like you can't compare somebody at an advanced level to that, you know, the majority of people.
Well, to me, the advanced lifter needs longer.
Absolutely.
You know, because as McGill said, and as you said, it's the microfractures that we're really talking about here. And I always just saw it as just getting the bar off your back is going to allow this. When I first started having people do this, start doing it for myself, it was because of the shoulders.
Right.
Because they're just getting fucking destroyed these last few weeks. And it's like, I just need shit off of my shoulders. You know, I don't want to be all cramped up under a bar. I don't want the shit in my hands when I'm benching. Just get this shit off of my shoulders and back. Yep. And just, you're going to get weak. You're going to do bodybuilding stuff, all the other. And then over time, the McGill, you know, then Brian, then it's, oh shit, yeah, there probably are a lot of microfractures in there that need to heal, and it's bones that need to heal. And obviously somebody that's lifting bigger weights, it's more advanced, is staying, I'm going to contradict myself, because the people that are staying in a better movement pattern should have less microfractures, but the load's going to be the issue. Where the beginner is going to be falling all over the place and accumulating more from that sense. But a phase of keeping the bar off your back is not a bad thing. Right.
I mean, especially if you're an advanced lifter that has been able to master the technique enough so you're more efficient, you're firing more efficiently, you're able to use more weight, and just the overall load that's going to be on your back throughout an entire training block is just going to be more. Not just a top level weight or the top percentage, but even just everything else you do is going to be heavier and heavier and heavier than the majority of intermediate or beginner lifters. And that's the volume that really kicks the shit out of you. I mean, I'm feeling it right now in my shoulder because now it's getting to the point where as soon as we started adding a ton of band tension, it's like, oh shit. Like now that fatigue starts to set in.
But we're going to pivot too. So, I mean, that's
let's
part
talk
of
about
the conversation as well is, when we spoke a few podcasts ago about open and closed systems, it's an example of this being an open system. Yep. Is your shoulders getting, I don't want to say it's cramping. It's getting jacked up, but not long-term jacked up. And temporarily impinged, I guess, would be a way to explain that. So it's like a nerve thing. And there's definitely ways to go about changing that moving forward. If you were to stay multiply, we'd move hands out, you know, there's things, but anyhow, it's there, right? And so when that starts, and with Adam, it's the bicepial tendonitis, when those start and it's this close to the meat, they're not going away.
You know,
it's manageable. Like there's different therapies and different things work for different people that can help. I don't want to say fix it because I'm not a therapist at all.
Yeah, just mitigating, reducing.
For me, when it's me, I explain it to myself as I'm just masking this until the meat comes to where I can really go about resting it and let it
just a Band-Aid.
Yes. So it's just masking to be able to get the work done that needs to get done. And one way about doing that is to just pivot it, you know, so when it is shoulder, bicep tendonitis, and you're benching the next day. Well, then the bench is taking a hit because you really don't have enough time to recover totally. I mean, we know that going into it from the very beginning of just all training. You hope to get recovered as much as you possibly can within a 24-hour period. It's actually a little less than 24 hours. And being over 70%, if I'm just to throw loose numbers out there, is a good place to be. But now it starts to fall because of this. And then the bench training becomes non-optimal. So there's options on pivoting here. You can pivot the heavy bench to the middle of the week. So move a max effort bench with shirt stuff to the middle of the week. I don't necessarily think with this little time left that that's the right move, because it takes some time to get acclimated to moving it that far, because now you're moving it several days.
All right.
To move it from Sunday to immediately after the squat on Saturday, so squat, then bench, and then move the speed pulls to Wednesday. That's a better pivot, which also allows for this habit's already been developed. We train on Sundays. So now there's still training on Sundays, but you guys will be like, fuck we supposed to do? Yeah. Well, you know what? Like very fucking light dumbbell curls, recovery work. Yeah. So now you have active recovery that normally I guarantee is not in the program. Because most people, and this is not a discipline thing, it's just what most people decide. Most people, given the choice of not doing anything on an off day or active recovery, are going to just do nothing or just walk and do something like that. They're not going to go into a gym and just do light work to be able to move. They're just not. Right. That's not everybody. Some will. In my experience, 90% are not. So how do you put it in there in such a way that falls within the emotional habits that have already been put in there? So it's a pivot.
And another thing about if you were to do, max effort work during the week, it's a different type of day, right? It goes from you're working all day, you've eaten a couple times, but you're not really focused in on training. It's like there's other things going on. And then you roll into the gym 5, 6 o'clock at night, and it's like, whew, like the energy level isn't nearly as there.
There's also, say a week is a microcycle. So there's also microcycle recovery factors we need to take into mind, where Wednesday and Thursday during the week they're pretty fucking easy.
Oh yeah.
It's just accessory work. It's so now we have from Sunday until Saturday being pretty much just easy chill time. And now we throw a max effort thing right in the middle of that. That's a big disruption. Right in the middle of calm waters. So you got calm waters, now you're going to drop a fucking cannonball. So, that becomes an issue. Now moving the speed pulls, which is light, it's not that demanding, and it's distraction of the shoulders. Right? And it's not heavy enough to really compress the back with you guys that much because it's 50%. It's not. So now we add in a distraction type thing for the area, the biceps, the shoulders, during the middle of that calm water, to maybe lower the water a little bit, instead of dropping in a fucking cannonball. Right. And this would be a different scenario if it was 8 weeks out. I know we're in a peaking phase right now. So peaking phases are more about moving things off the program than trying to put shit into different places and that kind of stuff, making it easier to recover from.
And the point of a peaking phase is that we're looking for that fatigue. We're not looking for injury, but we're looking for that fatigue. We're looking to maximize the amount of fatigue so we can recover from it without putting ourselves in a position where it's too much to recover from. Right?
Yes, exactly.
And I think a lot of people have a tendency to, I don't know how many people on here are actually competitive, but when you're, even for strongman, like when I was peaking for a meet or a contest, it was fucking terrible. Like you get to the point where you're like, is this shit done? Yeah. Like I'm sick of doing this. Because now everything is so specific, right? Everything is so contest specific or meet specific. It's like, I'm fucking sick of benching and squatting and deadlifting with a straight bar.
And it's all the nicks and dings, the shin splints and hands and shoulder. I mean, all that trap neck, all that shit, it just lingers during that time.
Right. And it's that feeling of, you can tell people that compete versus don't compete in what term of like their season they're on. It's because if they're like, I love this is so, I love training.
Yeah.
Versus it's like, I'm fucking done. I'm fucking done with this. This sucks. Give me a fucking yoke bar in a box. Like I don't really need anything else. But that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to after this is that time away to really work on shit I'm bad at in new ways, right?
Yeah.
It's like I told Adam, I go, man, I'm going to fuck you up with a sandbag after this.
All right, he'll have
He's gonna, But yeah, no, it's that seasonality. I think it's so important to illustrate and to kind of talk about because you just can't, and we've said it multiple times, you can't just hammer the gas over and over and
when
over.
you go back to some of the first conversations we had about programming, all that was, I look at 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Now, you know, if people have been listening to these conversations that we've had over these last several podcasts, now you can see why. Because you can't just, okay, I'm going to do this meet. Okay, when's the next one? Okay, 12, 16 weeks out. No, you're a fucking idiot.
No, you need that fluidity.
You know, you have to look at this from a longer term perspective. You know, optimally, you'd have somebody look at it as, I plan on doing this for 10 years.
Right.
And then be done.
The more time, the better, because it allows you to make better choices and you don't feel so compressed to do so many meets or so many contests in a short amount of time. When that was one of the worst things younger, see, it's both sides. I see both sides of this. When you're a newer competitor in something, it's like you want to compete to get the experience, but at the same time, you're not really peaking. You're not really preparing as well as you would.
They're not lifting enough.
Exactly.
You know, so they're not straining enough to have a recovery problem. They're not strong enough to have a recovery problem. You know, it's just, I don't know how else to go about explaining it, but there's that point where that hits. Yeah. You know, where it happens. And to go even further down a strength athlete's career, there's also the big phases. You know, here's this, I don't want to say beginner, intermediate, and advanced, but here's the first third of your competitive life. Here's the middle third, which is the biggest weights are probably going to be lifted. Yep. And then here's the last third where you're going to be hanging on. At some point, you just got to walk away. Yeah. And that those times need to be approach differently with the way the training is. So that first third, you can compete more frequently. You can do a lot of those things. That middle third, you got to compete more strategically, right? Because where's the competitive, that's going to be your prime, per se. So what do you want to do? Like, you're doing it for you, or are you doing it to compete against other people? You're doing it for rank? What's going on here? What do you want to do? And then on that back end, it's like how long is feasibly realistic for you to hold on to this dream that's probably over? All right. Then that's the fact, because, and that's for bodybuilding, powerlifting, it's for all of them, right? Because there's other factors that play into this as well, that if it's pharmacology or whatever you want to say, you know, if it's that aspect, then that's probably not great to be doing in your mid 40s. And
it's always that give and take.
Right? Well, yeah, it becomes a lot bigger issue when you're in that last third. You know, it can become an issue where, you know, I've had conversation with people just about that. Like, what the fuck are you actually doing here? Yeah. Right. Because there's risks to everything. And I mean, we're seeing it over the last couple of years. Yeah. And you're right. We have seen it a lot, but I think if it's one of those conversations you need to have with yourself and to understand like at what point you're at, right? If you're a 22-year-old athlete doing whatever, it's like, okay, well, you're probably, barring any injuries, is you probably have a couple like 10 years, 20 years left in doing whatever you're doing, right? Depending on the level you're at, depending your experience. But if you don't think that there's going to be nicks and dings and injuries, you're fucking out of your mind. See, like coming into this position, coming into even the multiply stuff, I was like, yeah, I would say I would rank my ability to stave off injury is very, very high. I wouldn't say I'm injured now, but it's fatigue. I feel fatigued, and that masks my ability to perform. And that's what we're looking for, right? You build up that fatigue. But the thing that I'm actually seeing is the ability to triage the situation while you're in a training session. I mean, you and Todd were poking fun at me and fucking Adam rolling around on the ground like Civil War veterans, but we
we're just trying to, it's like, okay, what can we do in the time right now to get through this session? Because we know we're not hurt, right? We know we're not broken, but we are exhausted. We are fatigued. We need to get through this somehow. And we had people digging into us with all sorts of tools. It's like, okay, that feels better for the time being, but it does, like you don't know what you're capable of in those situations unless you're in it. And I'm happy for the opportunity to kind of literally throw myself into the fire. And I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this. Wait, cool. We're just going to go try. We're going to figure this shit out together. But it's that level of fatigue that's so shocking, because that night after those squats, not only was I pissed, I was fucking livid for the entire evening. But I noticed my sleep is starting to get kind of like negatively impacted, because I was like, I am so fucking tired. I'm going to go right to sleep. And I went right to sleep, and I woke right up, and I was like, did I just time travel? I feel the exact same. You don't feel restful. You don't feel like you're actually recovering. And you just feel like shit. You just feel like shit.
That's where, when we're talking about that back third, so that's where I call the washed up meatheads, right?
Yeah, right.
That's with those people that are that washed up meathead, that peak phase, if it's powerlifting or strongman or bodybuilding, never needs to be done again.
Right.
That was the lesson I learned, of the decision I made, even when I was playing fake bodybuilder, with Justin and those guys I was working with to diet down. I always would tell them, look, I'm going to go to this point, which for you is probably going to be 8 weeks out, and we're done. I'm stopping.
Yeah, right.
I'm not doing that last stretch, because I know what that's like in powerlifting, or with the dumb shit that I do now. It goes right to that last stretch, or right before that last block, and time out.
Yeah.
There's no, from that risk benefit, there's no benefit for me to do that in this last third.
Yeah, right.
It's just not there. And I think what happens with a lot of washed up meatheads is that's where they want to go all the time, and it's not for what. It's not getting
any better, right? Like it's just the thing you were competing for in that second, in that middle block, can't be the same thing in that last block, because that's how people get really fucked up. Right.
They do. I mean, and in that last block, what people don't understand is, in the last block there, you're paying the price for what you did in the second block.
Oh, yeah.
So all that was like, oh, I'm just smoking through here, it's not a problem, and all this other kinds of, I went through all my powerlifting career with not one lower body injury. None. Yeah. Nothing. No missed workout, no lower back shit either, just nothing.
Yeah.
I got 2 replaced fucking hips.
Right.
Right now, upper body, I was like, upper body wise, that was fucked up. The pec tears and stuff like that. But that accumulation that's done here, you're pretty much fucked.
Yeah.
Right? You can do anything, you can mitigate and all that other kind of stuff there, but what was done here, you will pay for here. Physically, chemically, whatever was done here, you are going to pay.
Oh, yeah. Someone's keeping tabs.
Yeah, most definitely. And the thing is that when they're in that super push phase, super competitive phase, whatever that is, they're willing to make that trade. And that's fine, and I do think a lot of them understand what that trade is.
Yeah.
Right. So the conversations of, people need to think more. I think they do. I think they know, and they're going to be okay. Yeah. When it comes time, and the ones that don't, need to understand.
Yeah.
You can slide through. Very few get through unscathed if they're going to pushing to that highest level.
Yeah, if your foot's never on the gas, you're never gonna really understand what that actually feels like. Because, man, it's for people who have never, I guess, trained hard enough to kind of feel that, they must be like, oh, well, I can just do whatever I need to do to avoid it, right? I can just work on make sure my heart is super healthy, my blood work's great, and that's all really good, but there is going to come a point where you just don't have control over the physiological outcome of your body. Yeah. There are things that just happen because, like, if you're going for longevity or health, you're not fucking doing any of this shit anyway.
I'm laughing because the blood work one fucking kills me, right?
Yeah.
Because the number of fucking people that I've had tell me, yeah, I get my blood work done. But then you find out, well, I always make sure it's, like 8 weeks after the meet, I go off all the shit. I really reduce all the shit. I start eating really well. It's like they're fucking gaming their blood work.
And it's like I'm going to the dentist and I'm going to brush really hard.
Yeah. And it's like, look at how great my blood work was. I'm like, well, I want to see what it looked like, you fucking idiot.
At the worst.
2 weeks before the meet. Let me see what you do. 2 meets a year. So fucking half your year, it's probably looking like shit, but you don't even look at that. So I roll my eyes when I hear the blood work one because I'm like, yeah, okay.
Because you don't really know, like if you're not going to get it when things are bad, you can't just like put your head in the sand and be like, no, this is fine. Yeah. Everything's fine. Because it is like, you don't know how close you've come to bad shit.
Well, then they have their bro read it.
Yeah,
like,
right.
hey man, what do you think about this? And then
this is normal,
this
right?
is supposed to be high.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
We're athletes. That's why that's high.
Yes, exactly.
But I've talked to you about blood work quite a bit, and you have such a track record of like getting blood work so regularly that you have years and years history of your blood work. And I think that's such a smart thing to do, is like every time you get it, keep tabs on it so you can compare and contrast, because those are all just data points. Right? Yeah. If you go once a year, that's once a year for one snapshot during who knows what the fuck you were doing. That may be complete, like you had said. If your game in the system is like, I'm going 8 weeks, this paleo, walking 10 miles a day, you know what I mean? Yeah. All this bullshit. And then you're just going back to training like an asshole, and you don't know what's going on in your body during that time, right? Like it's so unrealistic and kind of disingenuous to do that.
Yes.
But yeah, to have all of those data points. I mean, we're talking years and years for you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I first came to Westside, it's when I hooked up with Dr. Serrano, and I hated him. I did. I hated it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've always known that I need to see a doctor at least once a year.
Yeah.
He insisted on the blood work, and it wasn't great, during those competitive. And it was only once a year, and I fucking hated him. I didn't like what he was saying. I was probably just like every other meathead, like, okay, yeah, that's fine. But then progressively over years, it just, you start validating more shit. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, this is just a little off. That's not that bad. All right. Oh, it's just borderline. It's not that bad. It's just a little over borderline. We can get it back, and then, having him, that's why I didn't like him, because he's on my shit, from the very beginning. And then it's like, okay, now this is fucked up. And let me tell you exactly why. And so then you make the changes and you dial that all back. And then once I retired, then it was, okay, there's some things in here we need to really fucking correct.
Yeah.
That, because my final push was probably a lot more things I shouldn't have, I don't want to say shouldn't have done. I pushed it harder than any of the other time. So it was going to fuck some of those things up even more. So then it was a matter of, okay, how do we get all this back, to normal? Mm-hmm. And I had a normal kind of, throughout those years. And fuck, I did IV therapy, chelation therapy, vitamin IV shit every 2 weeks for 3 fucking years. All this just to kind of get it back where it needed to be. And then it's been no less than 2 times a year, probably an average of 4. Oh, so quarterly.
Yeah.
Since 2005.
That's a lot of fucking data points.
Yes, because that's when I see them. And there's a lot of things that we're trying to correct. And then it got to a point where there weren't things that were necessarily fucked up because of that. They're just things that, vitamin D was very low. So then and it was very, very stubborn to get back up. So those things, and then there would be fluctuations in coenzyme Q12 and the Bs. The hemoglobin's genetically high for me. And so now I have my father's blood work, and then my blood work, and then where it was really bad, and then where's my norm, and then how's that fall? And where this gets to validate what I think you're trying to say is there's a norm in there, right? And so for me, the hemoglobin is, like I said, it's on the higher side. It's not borderline, but it's on the higher side. So when I would see a doctor that's not, Eric, they would always say, well, it's because you take testosterone replacement therapy. I said, well, my testosterone numbers here is only 325 or it's only 500 or whatever it's going to be. Well, it's because you're taking the testosterone.
Of course.
Okay.
Right.
So keep in mind, I got fucking quarterly blood results for a decade. So then this is why when I go to see a new doctor, I'm like fucking Roadhouse, man. What was the dude's name in Roadhouse? The fucking bouncer guy, Patrick Swayze, right?
Okay.
I carry my medical records for this fucking reason. And so they'll say that, and I'll say, well, that's an interesting thing. Let me show you. Every time my testosterone was in the 800, 900, 1,000 range, my hemoglobin was low.
Right.
It was like 14, 15, comparatively low for me. But look when it was down. Here, when it was 165 and 300, the hemoglobin was fucking 19. Yeah. So what you're saying, I need to take more shit. Yeah. Because
because you have that playbook for you.
Yeah. So and trust me, once you get to that level, most doctors are not assholes. I mean, once you get that, they want to help you. That's why they're doctors. And once you get there, then like, oh, okay, cool. Now we can take this off of the table. Now we know it. Now let's look and see what this really is. Because is this where it should be? Is it elevated because of something? And that's why having that routine blood work, really, really helps, because Eric is my general practitioner, internal medicine. He's my family doctor, whatever you want to call that. There's issues when you need to see a specialist, and you're going to see a specialist. They're going to want their own labs. They're going to want the so they're going to have all these other. They don't have your medical history. No. I mean, they'll act like they review your medical history, but they really don't. And very rarely are they going to call your family doctor. Now, situations like this opens that door to be able to say, okay, here's what this is, here's what that is. And it helps moving forward, because you have to be proactive on these things, especially if you have the history that I have. I know I'm going to pay. You see what I'm saying? I know I'm going to pay. Well, what can I do to reload or to reduce that?
Well, that diligence just automatically, so you have that information, you have that data, increases your level of care, whoever you go to now, because now you have the objective data from years and years and years, and be like, here, look at this. And now they can do their job better, the specialist or whoever it may be. If it's somebody besides Serrano, it's like now they can see and and actually connect real dots, not just like these systematized general numbers based on population, based on age, based on right. It's like, no, we're going to N equals 1 in this situation, right? So this test is now going to be a test for you as opposed to the norms.
Well, it keeps me accountable as well.
Right.
To where, I'm not on a strict diet, obviously. Everything's in moderation. But
even moderation. Moderation.
So I know, in February, I'm gonna get my blood work again. And so I know what my risk factors are. I know what that has to mean, and I don't have to rely on my body weight, my BMI, my body fat, all this other general crap that sometimes that's all people have to go by. I rely on what all this is. And yes, my body weight does influence this, so I know where that threshold is. And then I also know each year moving forward, it probably needs to come down a little bit as well, because it's going to become more of that risk factor. But that's just, and that doesn't guarantee what I'm saying right here doesn't guarantee a fucking thing. It just makes you more aware of what your health markers are. And the reason I say that is John was exactly like this. This is where I learned all this from.
Sure.
He still passed.
Right.
So nothing guarantees anything, but it is going to guarantee and lower the risk factors, obviously, because you're going to be accountable for those. And it's going to keep you more accountable. Because it's hard to stay accountable. You don't want to use metrics like, well, here's what my lean body mass is, especially if you're on that back end. That's going to go down every year as you get older. Yep. Once you get over a certain age, in my mid-50s, I can keep fighting to try to keep what I have, but I'm not going to put on 30 pounds of lean body mass. Right. Nor do I want to. And so there's all that as well.
And I think it's one of those things too, is if you're starting to use those norms, like the general data later in your career or later in life is those norms don't have anything to do with like we had talked about earlier, is the potential damage or risk factors you put your body through for the first 55 years of your life, right? Like like those norms may be norm for most people most of the time, but at the same time, it's like that's not you. Right?
I mean,
like,
it's fucked up though, because it's like all the max effort exercises I used to like be obsessive about. It's like I need to keep this one in this range and this one in this range. Now it's like that's my hemoglobin, that's my fucking vitamin D, that's my cholesterol, that's this.
But it's one of those things that I think everybody most people that I've seen or talked to, it's like, yeah, I get blood work once a year, cool. But it's like, but you don't know what that means. You don't know what it means long term. You don't know what it means for you from season to season. I mean, we periodize everything in training. Like you had said, you'll focus in on make sure my floor press is here so that this is here. But it's like we don't periodize the type of health habits that you have throughout the year. You were talking to me about supplements and like vitamin D and like all this stuff, and you sent me this list and you're like, this is what you cycle different nutrients and supplements for different parts of the year based on just the information that you have. And it's like, holy shit, like this can be as nuanced as anybody wants to make it based on the information that they have, and you have all that information for you, so you know what works for you. You have that playbook. And I think people are so I think people get obviously in their youth, most people are lazy with their health. It's like, I'll just hammer a pizza and show up hungover and that'll be great. And I'll do that for 20 years. And nobody really focuses on this shit until something bad happens. Right?
Well, they should before.
Absolutely.
I won't say that I focused the same as what I do now, but I had it. But the other thing that needs to be understood with blood work is that's what your metrics were for the time that blood was pulled.
Exactly.
Right? Later that day, it could be different.
Way different.
Could be dehydrated. There's a lot of factors that play into that. Some things are going to be a little bit more stable than some other things. Was it fasted? Was it not fasted? There's a lot.
Are you recovering from training? Like the creatinine, right? Like when the muscle damage is like if you had a hard training session the day before, it's going to fuck up your numbers.
Even more so than that. I mean, I will not train. I won't train at all for 4 or 5 days before, and I won't train hard for at least a week before, because that's my standard before the blood's done. Yep. So I can pull back on the training 4 times a year, to be able to make sure when my blood work's done, it's done relatively in the same time, the same fasted state, the same recovered state, just for that reason.
Yeah, I had like a scare with like my kidneys because I went to an appointment with the doctor and got blood work while I was water loading. So I was like, they're like, oh, it looks like your kidneys are getting overworked. It's like, yeah, I would say so because I'm on gallon 3 for the day, So like even my body weight, they're like, wow, your body weight's way higher than it was. I was like, yeah, I'm water loading. Like I didn't think about it, but it caused all these red flags. Then when after the contest and after nationals, I got my blood work again and they're like, oh, you're fine. It's like, fuck. Like that was a lot of stress and it was undue stress because I should have been like, oh fuck, like let me just reschedule this for a couple weeks out, or even before I started water loading, have that shit. But that was an extreme example of like the medical field doesn't really know or follow the shit that we do in the gym.
Yes,
right?
And yes, they don't. And on the flip side of that is I have to let Eric know that I did take the time off. Yeah. Right? Because he's going to know that the liver enzymes will be skewed if I just trained, and he will just assume, because I've trained my whole life, that I've still been training normally. Right. So I have to say, look, I've not done anything for a week. So now if he sees anything skewed with that, it's a different number to him than otherwise. So that's just basic communication.
Absolutely.
But normally, we'll just leave it there. I mean, I could go on forever about this, but I'm not a doctor, so sure. There would be a more interesting conversation to have, a doctor on the podcast that knows all this stuff.
That would be cool if we had Serrano out here. That'd be good. But yeah, no, I think the bottom line is have more information than less, take your...
And it's not just blood work either.
No,
so when I'm talking
no.
about this level here, there's calcium scores, there's heart scans, there's all kinds of other things that should be done as markers as well,
sure.
especially as you're getting older. So blood work it's actually kind of a shitty metric. There's other metrics that as you get older, and your doctor, if they're a good doctor, will know what tests that you should have based upon your own history, and get them. Don't, not get those. It's just stupid.
Absolutely. And just from my own experiences, like when I was weighing 220, my blood work was different than when I was 198. Like just based on body weight alone. Like the diet was, it was just eye-opening to see. And I've been collecting my blood work as well, just because I have family history of all sorts of crazy shit. So it's just important to realize that when it comes to health markers, it's like details do matter. And it's like, don't just be like, oh, my doctor's an asshole. They don't get it. I train so hard, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, open up a conversation with them. Maybe find a different doctor who knows about it, or educate them. Advocate for yourself, I guess I should say.
And maybe they're not going to be on the same page. I mean,
right.
Eric and I were not on the same page for a long time.
Right.
But I was smart enough to keep going. And then, he stuck with me long enough knowing that at some point in time, this fucking idiot, is going to listen to what I'm going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I think it'd be a good time we're about an hour in, just to get some of these questions in. We got some super chats that rolled in. I'll start at the top here. Guys, so make sure drop some super chats in here. We'll get to your questions. Dave and I will answer them, and we'll go from there. First super chat is from Basement Brandon. My Elite FTS Power Bar shows up tomorrow on sale. They're on sale now for $2.99 with free domestic shipping. Free advertisement there.
That sale's gonna stop.
Yeah, is that done? The sale is finished tomorrow. So guys, if you're watching this, go grab that power bar. $2.99 with free domestic shipping.
The garage rack will go on sale tomorrow.
Yes.
The Swiss bar will go on sale tomorrow. Something else I can't remember right now.
Okay, awesome. Like wraps and shit too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Straps
and wraps. All that.
Not straps, wraps.
Just wraps.
Knee wraps and wrist wraps.
Cool.
And these are the better than Black Friday deals. So to go back on that, so the rack is definitely discounted.
Yeah,
hard.
Very hard. Guys, if you have not seen this rack, please check it out. This is going to be the lowest price this thing has ever been.
We got to get rid of them.
Got to get rid of them. We have bigger and better things on the way. But no, it's just be on the lookout for that stuff. Next one, Andrew Young. Dave, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck? Classic.
I've been asked that several times. I never know how to fucking answer it. Probably the 100 little ones, because I can just kick the little fuckers all over the place.
No, I agree. I'm always in the camp of the 100 duck-sized horses. Next up, Jay Bell. What were Dave Tate's best lifts performed raw?
I can't count those because I didn't compete raw. You see what I'm saying? So I can tell you training lifts, but to me, that's like the dumbest fucking thing in the world. So if it really fucking matters, then people can leave a lot of comments and we can discuss it in the next podcast.
Yeah.
But I don't see any reason to ever talk about best training lifts.
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. And when I came into the sport, it was I believe at the time, the only federation was the USPF. That was it. And that was single ply, no bench shirts. So I can say I did compete and benched a 520 at, I think it was 220.
Jeez.
With no bench shirt.
Holy shit.
And that was a year out of high school, or my last year of high school, something like that. My bench was good. The deadlift, there was a deadlift suit, which was the same as the squat suit. So I can't say it didn't help, but it didn't help a whole lot. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, that's part of the next question that we have coming up. Jay Bell, how many pounds is Sam squeezing out of the gear at the moment? Which lift is he having the best luck in learning with the gear?
He ain't getting a lot of any of the gear because it's all fucking big.
I know.
Probably a little bit. I mean, you can probably say more so than anybody else, but I'll speak for you to at least put this out here. It's not like we have a lot of, even though we had a ton of metal inventory that we basically had to write off and throw away, that was a lot of big stuff.
Yeah, right.
For like 400-pound people and tiny people. So we don't have this inventory of gear laying around, and there's no sense in Sam buying new multiply gear if this is not a road that he's going to stay on. He's just kind of sticking his toe in the water. There's just no sense when there's enough used shit, you know, that we can get. It just so happens the squat suit's about 2 sizes too big. The briefs aren't bad. The bench shirt, I mean, it's okay gear, but nothing that he could get. I only hesitate because you got to be able to keep the back position on the way up. You get 100 pounds more out of the squat suits, probably, if you can keep the position than what he's getting right now. The bench shirt, maybe 50 pounds more. Deadlift suit seems to be okay. Even being big, it seems to help you. All a deadlift suit's going to help you.
Yeah, I think, especially with the deadlift, it's starting to feel more comfortable. I was never like a big sumo puller. I make the joke, I think I pulled sumo 7 times before starting this, but it's allowing me to get into a better position that I don't think I would be able to get into without it.
And with your squat, you can squat the same right now with straps down as you could straps up. You can probably squat better with straps down.
Yes.
So, and you could probably squat damn near the same with just the briefs. So that gives some kind of idea.
Yeah, I agree with that. The one thing I think, which I think this would be a good podcast at some point, is I think people think you throw the shit on and you're just automatically stronger. It's such a technique game that I think if given a full year, that wouldn't even be enough to really get into. If I have stuff that fits perfectly and I train it for an entire year, I think I would be able to get obviously far more out of it.
No, you would, but here's the problem with, and this is going to answer different layers of questions here about gear. Here's the problem with people that get into gear, multiply specifically, is they get in it and they spend all their fucking time trying to figure out, this is new gear lifters, what gear they need to use to get the best carry out of over. Right. That's the last fucking piece of the puzzle.
Agreed.
That's why we're not worried about the suit being fucking 2 sizes too big or the bench shirt. We're not worried about the carryover. It's enough gear that you have to be able to change your technique to accommodate where the gear is, but not so radical that it's going to create this big carryover, where that's not the most important thing. If hell, in the first 3 meets a multiply lifter is going to do, what will happen is they'll spend all this nuanced time on trying to find the perfect squat suit, the perfect bench shirt, and fucking 4 or 5 years go by.
Yeah.
And they still haven't found it. Meanwhile, they still haven't built up their fucking upper back. They still haven't built up their raw strength. They still haven't brought all this other stuff up. So take the 2 lifters, the one that's being eased into the gear, but learning the process, learning how to peak, learning the technique, learning all these other things. The one that's looking for the miracle fucking carryover over a period of 3 years. This one here, it's not even close.
Yeah.
Because now all these other things, the accommodation, what it's supposed to feel like at the top, what it feels like at the bottom, all those things have already been taken care of. So then they start tweaking and dial all this in. Then it doesn't matter what fucking brand it is, what shirt it is. It's just how do we get the right fit and the right tailored gear for the structure and the style of that lifter.
Right.
Where people seem to think that, okay, if you want to do this, you want to start with like light briefs, and then you want to work into heavier briefs. And then you really want to take some time and dial in the suit, the best carryover you can get out of the suit, fucking get into the top end 400, 500, whatever the fuck dollar suits they are, and get that on as soon as you possibly can. And then the same thing, and you're a weak fucking gear lifter is what happens.
Right.
You know, 3 years later, you fucking suck. You know, you can't do shit. Where, you know, back end, and a lot of times on that, say that's that route, the person that goes this route, a lot of times you're gonna, after a couple meets, you're gonna say, you know what, this just isn't my gig. And that's not a bad thing, because fuck, that's 95% of every power lifter that ever competes.
Right.
They're going to do 1-2 meets and say, you know what, this isn't my gig. I'm going to do something else. So there's another variable to why have this giant investment.
Absolutely.
You know, in all this, if in 2 meets they're going to say, you know what, this just isn't my deal. This isn't my thing. Well, great. You just spent $3,000 on the best fucking equipment to have a shitty fucking raw, you know what I'm saying? I can
Yeah.
go on forever about this shit.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And again, as someone who has no experience in it, I'm using this opportunity to learn as much as I can about it.
Well, it's already frustrating.
Yeah.
Just as is.
Yeah. Right.
So that frustration level increases tenfold when you're trying. When it increases even more when in some of the lifter's brain they think this magical piece of equipment exists.
Well, right. Yeah.
And they don't have it, but they got to find it. You know, then they're focusing everywhere they shouldn't be focusing on. What they need to be focusing on is getting fucking stronger.
Right.
And then all the other things will come into play.
Yeah. And that's the thing I'm most excited about, having trained this way for a while now, is when I do come back to my normal, like, squat width, my normal deadlift width, like, everything is I'm like chomping at the bit. I'm like, oh fuck, I want to see like what we're at, because we've been out so wide. I've been working on shit that I've never worked on consistently or well for years, right? It's just like, this was my time to work on shit that I'm just not good at. And I went into this experiment, I'm going to call it, with like, I don't give a shit what's on the bar. And like, even like working with Adam, you'll be like, oh, I hit some of this. I'm like, cool, what are we going to hit for weight? Adam's like, I'm thinking. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Just put whatever. And because it's such a different thing than I've ever experienced. So it's like, it's pretty fucking cool. But yeah, no, it is. I have no idea what I'm squeezing out of my gear at the moment, because even going into this, I had no idea what the fuck my lifts were at anyway. Right? Like, I was doing strongman.
Yes.
So it's like,
and the whole process, I mean, it's that open process, right? It's the whole process is the same even for a high school kid in here is not using any gear at all.
yeah.
You know, so it's the same. Yeah, it's the same process. You got to keep the focus on what's important.
Yep.
You know, what's important is having the lifter learn how they feel, how are they recovering, what has to be done here, and then if a pivot needs to happen, let them know it's okay to do that.
Sure.
You know, and here's why it's okay to do it. Here's why to do it. Because a lot of these things, that you've gone through, if it was to be thrown even to an intermediate lifter, they're going to think, what the fuck?
Right.
But when looking at it from looking at the forest instead of the tree, it's like, whoa, yeah, that makes more sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, if I were to have this conversation on Saturday, I'd be motherfuckering everybody and throwing shit like a big baby. But to be able to step back from it and be like, oh, I get it. Like, I get it. Like, it makes some sense here. Next question here, we got Nick's Lifts. Hey, Dave, what would your response be to J.M. Blakely's argument against speed work? Cheers and thanks for the content. I think you've already commented on that before. Didn't you have the conversation with him?
No, we talked about it. I mean,
yeah.
I think with a lot of the things that JM says, most people, when they step back, will agree with what he's saying. You know, and they're just being said in different ways. So from that speed perspective, it's first if I was to have an in-depth conversation with him about this, we first need to define what speed is.
Right.
Right. What does that mean?
And then you got to bring gravity into it.
Yes. I mean, is this rate of force development we're speaking about? What are we talking about?
Right. You got to get the verbiage right.
Are we actually talking about how fast the bar moves? Does the bar going to move any faster? What exactly are we talking about? Are we talking about intent?
Yep.
You know, compensatory acceleration? What is this? And then once you break down the nuances of what it is that you're talking about, and this I found with pretty much anybody in the industry that's been around for a long time, you're saying the same things.
Yes. Yeah, you just put your own little flavor on it based on your experiences and whatnot. But I agree. I think that's also a good point to bring up, is if you're going to have a conversation with somebody, another coach, an athlete, you have to make sure you're using the same words the same way.
Yes. Otherwise, you end up in this stupid little debate and argument that makes no sense.
And we see that on the internet constantly.
Well, they love that.
Yeah.
They absolutely fucking love that.
Yes. I've seen coaches have that conversation back and forth when they just don't see that they're saying the same thing.
Exactly.
All right. Next one. Corinna Marie says, did you have to search for a doctor that was agreeable to testing blood work quarterly? What are the most beneficial tests for lifters?
I can't tell you the most beneficial for lifters because, again, I'm not a doctor, but I was fortunate when I came to Columbus to hook up with Dr. Serrano. So I did go through a lot of doctors before him. So it wasn't like when I was in college and all these other years I was lifting, I was not looking. I went through the same discussions that other lifters have had.
Sure.
With doctors, orthopedics, sport medicine people. I've been that person, right? When you walk in there at 270 pounds and a lifter, yes, I know what it's like to be on that receiving end of the people that's looking at you and judging you and all that. I get that. I was fortunate, but at that same time, I had to go. Now, what I think cholesterol, should be measured. People are going to debate the nuances of this all over the fucking place,
absolutely.
Right? So I'm not going to give numbers or any of that kind of shit. I'm just saying that should be it depends. Hemoglobin I think is one, especially if they're using any kind of anabolic substances. It's something that's got to kind of be looked at. Testosterone obviously is one. Liver enzymes are going to be one. Vitamin D, especially with all the shit that's been going around, it's that vitamin D is very important. That's where I can kind of, I'm sure there's a lot of things I'm forgetting, in the whole equation with that. But a lot of the basic metabolic panels are going to have the estrogen. They're going to have all the other things in there that kind of correspond with that. As I've gotten older, I've had to look at different things that do fluctuate for me. The B's fluctuate for me for some weird ass fucking reason. DHEA is another one that fluctuates for me. And I'll just leave it. Most people aren't doing anything.
Yeah, anything is going to be better than nothing.
Yes, exactly. They're not. And then you don't have to have a doctor to get your blood work done.
Right.
There's direct labs. There's other labs that you can use. That it may not be the best thing because who's gonna help you navigate it? You can search and kind of see, which is probably better than nothing at all.
Yeah, right.
There's online places too that I'm not really aware of. I know they exist.
Yeah.
I think that Mark, it's where, oh my God, fucking Smokey that used to work.
Oh yeah.
So he's working for them, and so there's reputable companies that can kind of help guide through that. I'm not that educated on referring different companies.
Sure.
Only because I've never had to.
Right.
I don't have to worry about that. But I have used direct labs many times where I will get it done first and then take it with me to my doctors. So I'm not going to the doctors, then him pulling it there, and then him calling me with the results. Because when that happens, it's a pain in the ass for me to actually get the results.
Right. And then, or they don't call right away, or they're just, it's,
And my insurance is not going to cover for a year.
No.
So that's where that balance kind of comes in.
All right. Next one from Niles Muschenborn. I don't know, Germany. No questions, just thanks for all the info from Germany. Oh, there you go. I'll probably compete within the next 2 years thanks to you guys once I get strong enough. Interesting. He's not going to compete until he's strong enough.
Okay.
All right.
I think that's a wasted opportunity, dude. I really do.
Yeah.
I think you compete when you can compete. You don't worry about that because strong enough is based upon what?
Exactly. Who you're comparing yourself to.
Yeah. You're missing a lot of experience. Your first meet experience. It's always going to be weird. It doesn't matter. It's always going to be weird. You're always going to feel a little out of place. You're always going to feel like you don't need to be. You got to get those things through. So if you wait till you're strong enough, you still have to go through those things.
Yep. Absolutely. From next one, Dr. King Schultz. Is it necessary to vary squat stance on conjugate? I feel powerful, no pain at my stance, but if I widen the stance, hip becomes painful. If I go narrow, I get knee pain. Any tips?
Well, avoid pain.
Yes.
That's the first tip. So with the direct answer is for you, do the stances that don't involve pain first. Second, is it important to vary it and conjugate? I think it's important to vary it no matter how you train.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be some of the reasons why you're having some of the issues that you're potentially having right now. Does that mean that you just go and say, fuck it, and you do it through pain? No. You figure out what's causing the pain and find a way to become pain-free, even if it's body weight or keep an eye, I've come back from bad fucking injury. Even if it's reverse band around your fucking elbows in a power rack to where it's deloading your weight so you're only weighing 85 pounds, you know, find a way to have no pain, wide and close. That's where my education level kind of drops off with this. You need to find what's causing the hip pain and what's causing the knee pain, which may not be that stance. And it's probably not that stance. It's either up chain or down, or upstream or downstream. Yep. Saying wide and close. And I'm sure you would probably say the same, except have suggestions on movements that he should do.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, if you're finding that you go wide, your hips hurt, and you go narrow, your knees hurt, the first thing I would ask is like, how wide is wide and how narrow is narrow? Because if your stance, you don't have to go that much farther out or that much more in. Like, it's not this extreme thing. You see that a lot with benches, right? Like you see, oh, this is my competition bench, and then you see this, oh, this is my close grip bench, and like their fucking fists are almost touching. And this is my wide bench, and they're like all the way outside the rings. And it's like, it's wider than you were and more narrow than you were. It's based on you. It's not based on, you know, there's no universal wide, there's no universal narrow. And I think from the sounds of it, maybe if you're using it, it's like, okay, I never squat wide, but I'm going to go wide stance squat for a max effort day to a single. And it's like, maybe that's not a great idea. Like what I had to do for multiply lifting is you're like, all right, go to your normal squat stance, just go out like a couple inches. And you had to build out, right? You had to build out your ability to maintain those positions and to not just have your knees collapse like Bambi, right? Like if you're using these extreme variations, you're going to find that this weird shit kind of pops up because your body's like, this is not something I've ever done or I've ever been used to, right? Yep. One of the best ways that I can say for you to get a little bit of benefit from different stances is like on your supplemental work is like reduce the weight a little bit, hit some reps with a wider stance, right? Don't throw it right into the mix of a max effort lift if you don't have the experience at that wide stance or that narrow stance. Build it up, right? Just kind of build it up over time. I think that would be the best thing I could say for that.
For my meathead training, I do close stance work, I do wide stance work. So if I start to go into a block that's targeted to try to push my dumbass spider bar squat or whatever it is that I want to push, then I'm going to quit the close and I'm going to focus more specific just on the wide and the things that strengthen the wide. But most of the time, it's close and wide. Sometimes I'll do phases. If the weight's lighter, I call them conditioning phases of speed work. So the higher set stuff, I'll use 3 different stances the same way somebody may use 3 different stances on their bench. But to piggyback off what you said, right now I'm doing close and wide, but to say it was always in one stance. So always in my strongest stance. And I wanted to start going close and wide. I would probably start with the 3 different stances on the dynamic work, but you'd be shocked to see how little those stances actually change.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, it's basically, here's the stance I feel strong in, my normal stance, toe, heel, there's there, and then toe, heel. That's it. That's where it starts. And then over time, with the same weight, because it's light, I will not increase the weight through this phase until I can get to what I consider a close stance, which is going to be about, it's closer than shoulder width. So like conventional deadlift and a super wide. So that weight may stay 3 plates on each side of the bar for 2 or 3 3-week phases, just for me to progress on my stance, being able to be wide and be able to be close.
Making that the variable as opposed to the weight on the bar.
Yes, that's what's being progressed.
All right. Next one, Douglas Zelkowski. No question there. Just a nice little donation there. Thank you very much. Cole Phillips, same thing. No message. Then we got the infamous Nate Harvey, Conjugate U, says Sam rules. Thanks, Nate. I want to get Nate on the podcast here.
Yeah,
he needs to just get out here and not be so elusive.
I want him to come out and do one of those coaching things, when he drives his truck.
Oh, yeah. The shit sport coaches.
Yes. It's a whole podcast of that.
He could. He's
got 100 of them.
He's got lists and lists. The next question we got from Carson S. Sam did a video recommending 3 specialty bars. Where can I find an axle bar with rings and knurling like you showed in the video? We sell one of those, right? Is that the Gordo bar?
I think so.
Yeah. So, Jacob, if you can find is Jacob there? Mm-hmm. Jacob is there. Find I think it's the Gordo bar.
El Gordo.
El Gordo bar on elitefts.com.
All right, put it in.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's Carson. That was actually the bar
that I racist to have that name of that bar. Yeah.
It's all right. We just got canceled. It's fine. But yeah, that was actually the bar that I showcased in the video. So yeah, check that out. Actually, somebody just mentioned that as well. So cool.
Said it was racist?
No, definitely not. Here we go. Next one from Cole Phillips. Been lifting for over a year now. I signed up for an untested meet as a natural. Oops. Best way to get the most experience. Do the meet.
What podcast did we talk about that on? The first meet, it would be in,
I think it was 78.
No, but it would definitely be in the help me out here, the timestamps.
Yes.
We went into this, and I don't know if it was YouTube or if check the YouTube because it's easier to see.
I think it was on the YouTube because I remember doing timestamps or something like this. I would say like 78-ish around there, 77, 78, something like that.
I think that's what this person is asking.
Yeah.
We actually did a clip of that. So it should be a separate video in there as well.
Oh, perfect. Even better. Next one, Derek McBrayer. Hit a 50-pound beltless squat PR, keeping the supplemental lift the same per your words. How do you feel about back off volume as supplemental on max effort upper? So like doing the same variation and just backing off on weight. Nate Harvey does that. That's like a Conjugate U thing I've seen.
This is a supplemental exercise?
Yeah.
So hitting it hard and then going lighter? And
yeah, like a max effort, whatever he wants to do, and then using the same variation for back off volume.
What do you mean back off volume?
So it looks...
Oh, I know what you're saying. So you work up to the single.
Yep.
And then use that lift for volume.
Yeah, like a percentage of that lift.
Okay. So then what happens on week 2? You're using the same max effort exercise again?
I don't know. Probably not.
I don't.
So like if it was he worked up to a shoulder saver single, right? And then used like 80% of that for like a few reps.
No, I see what you're saying. So he's going to use that as a secondary exercise. That's fine. That's
fine. Here's our buddy, Fist or Pistols. Rock and roll, my dudes. That's all he said. Excellent. Fist or Pistols. That was actually the last super chat. Guys, if you have any super chats, drop them in. We'll take a look. Yeah, I mean, that's it so far. I think that's all of them. Jacob, I didn't miss any, did I? Oh, nope, just one popped in. Douglas Zelkowski, should football players or any athlete max attempt on first day of the off-season work or go to something like a 3-rep max or form failure?
The first day?
Like showing up for off-season.
I know this is a loaded question. I know what the fuck's going on with this because his coach is probably having him do this. So then we answer.
Actually, let me read it. Yeah. So I'm a strength coach for us school, and they want max attempt on day 1 of off season.
My answer to that is fuck no. You're not conditioned for that. The athletes are not conditioned to be able to do that. Now I understand the reason for it. to be able to show the progression. But let me tell you something. If you take somebody that hasn't really done anything in a month, and then you have them max out, and then you train them for a month, they're going to be stronger.
Yep.
And you inflate your numbers
Job
to make
security.
you look like a better coach, right? Which I understand that as well, where you don't have to max out a beginner lifter to be able to know if they're progressing or not.
Right.
Where here's the problem with maxing out a beginner, say a football player. Their technique sucks. So what are you going to consider their max, where the technique breaks down, right? Because that's probably going to be about 70% of what they could muscle fuck up.
Right.
Or you're just going to keep throwing more weight on and have them lift an ugly ass weight in a compromised position to be able to get more weight. Because if you're going to use the 70% compromised technical breakdown, well then fuck yeah, it's going to be easier for you to put 30 more, 50 more, 100 more pounds on this lift over the next 3 or 4 weeks just by technical stuff. Which, what's the point of doing the max to be able to put on for the technical stuff?
Right.
And if you're going to have them max out and just have them muscle fuck it up in a compromised position, then what's the point of that? So my question back is why?
Oh, right. Yeah, right. That's where I was going to go. I would be just like, what does he want? Does he just want progression?
Well,
or does he want data?
Yeah, things have changed over the past decade where coaches, not strength coaches, but coaches, the football coaches, the sport coaches, want those metrics. And so the strength coach is kind of like stuck in this weird position of, well, do I say fuck no? Yeah, guy's my boss. Or do I, so things have changed to where I think now I don't think this is that big of an issue anymore. I'm not in that area, to be able to know that. I would like to know why, right? Because it's a metric, one metric. So my other question would be, are you testing the 15 other metrics that also apply to the position as well?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's the thing, right? Like I would just you have to dig in deeper as to where he wants to go with that. If it's just the thought, like, okay, 1 rep max, they got stronger. It's like, well, if that's his knowledge base of, like, he just doesn't have the collective knowledge of what it entails on a physiological standpoint to increase your ability to play those positions. Like, I get it. I totally get that. But
there is this, keep going. I interrupted.
No, but I think it's worth having a conversation. Even you're just like, hey, why is this your metric?
Yes. Now, to flip this over backwards, there's obviously more garage and home gyms now than there's ever been in history.
Yeah.
So my advice to that strength coach and any other high school strength coach is, please take the time and show your kids how to bench press and how to deadlift with the best form and technique that they can. Even if it takes a week or 2 weeks of your time, because they are going to go into their buddy's basement.
They're going to do it.
Garage, and they are going to max out on the deadlift, and they're going to max out on the bench. I would say the squat, but I'm going to probably guess
if they have the choice, it's not good.
They're not going to do that, but they're going to get in a pissing match like high school kids do that have, overblown testosterone, to be able to see who can pull the most, who can bench the most.
Yeah.
So teach them well enough so they just don't fucking get hurt doing some stupid shit. Teach them how to spot each other in the bench as well, so they don't go do this in their buddy's garage while his buddy is flexing in the mirror. and just all those things that high school kids are going to do, just know they're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And he also followed up with, no, they don't want to test anything, nor do they want to individualize it. So they just wanted to see where their coach wants to see where to set their rep range on battling it. So he's just using it as a means of putting them in percentages, like percentage-based programs.
I mean, I can still kind of flip it and say, if I was having the conversation with a coach, would that coach rather see this athlete be able to do a pull-up, be able to do a push-up, to be able to do a hanging leg raise, and a full range of motion goblet squat?
Right.
Which is more important to their athletic ability? What metrics do they really want to see? And I think most coaches would say, yeah, it's probably important for them to be able to do those things, or old school coaches to be able to lunge for 50 yards, a real fucking lunge, not this, shit that kids will do on the football field that are like just long steps with a slight knee bend.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I mean, even talking about, like, I know Wendler said this when he was working with his younger kids, like he doesn't let them touch a bar until they can do what is like 100 pounds or something for a goblet squat for a set of 20.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's like, there's a reason. It's like, what are you trying to do? You're trying to get them stronger to get them better at their sport. Right. Yes. And it's just, I get that. Actually, just another question just popped in. Andrew Goss, does powerlifting and strongman complement each other?
I'm going to say no.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a competitive power lifter, the systems that you're working to improve are different than that of strongman, right? There's always going to be a aerobic capacity or anaerobic. There's going to be some sort of a metabolic conditioning that you'll need in strongman to compete, even if it's not the longest distances. You still need to be able to move well.
Well, this is not to say that strongman movements, is that how you would define strongman movements? Yeah. Certain strongman movements can't be beneficial to a powerlifter.
Oh, for sure.
For GPP work, stuff like that. Now, say yoke walk stuff. Could that be beneficial? Yes. Could it be beneficial at the super heaviest weight? No. Mm-hmm. Right. But at a lighter weight for conditioning, to build upper back strength, torso stability, most definitely. Yep. So there's that, to where there's a certain point where it's probably not going to help because it's too heavy, it's too much load, where that's what that strong man needs to be able to have. Mm-hmm. And in contrast, the power lifts can help with strongman programmed correctly into the program. Right. Now if you want to do like you're doing and have a dedicated phase just to be able to do a powerlifting meet, will that have some correspondence? I think it will, but there's going to be a transitionary period to go from the strength acquisition that was gained to transition it into the skill set that's needed in strongman. Mm-hmm. It's not just going to go, here's this, then we start training. Like that's the off season. Right. There's no transference time to happen. Yeah, I see it as, if you want to be lackluster in both, then yes. Right? Like, yeah, like in off-season times, like I'm gonna take Adam through some strongman stuff, mm-hmm. like because it's different movement planes, it's mm-hmm. shit he's not good at. It's some conditioning. But if I'm looking at two athletes that are peaked for their sport, a powerlifter and a strongman, they don't complement each other well at the highest level, mm-hmm. right? Because it's just so different. I mean, there was a point not too long ago when my overhead press was better than my bench press, right? Just because it's mm-hmm. so specific to what I needed to be good at. But yeah, I mean, they can easily complement each other, especially if you're a beginner in kind of both. It's like getting better at a deadlift is going to help you in strongman, but it's also going to help you in powerlifting, right? Mm-hmm. But getting better for deadlift for reps isn't going to benefit you necessarily for powerlifting if your goal is 1 rep, right? Like there's just different systems. I think mm-hmm. once you get to the higher levels, they start to kind of pull away from each other as opposed to complement each other. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. That was the last super chat question that came in. I did want to have one more comment about that shirt you're wearing. That's kind of a... Oh, the FU shirt.
The FU shirt.
That's the next limited launch.
Yeah. So it's a little sneak peek if people have been sticking around for this long. Yeah. Yeah. You want to finish it up? You want to close it out? Want to show off that Grow hoodie one more time?
Well, yeah.
Jacob, we'll put those link in there for those Grow hoodies because those I bet you will.
Just go buy the Grow hood. They're limited. It helps support the podcast. Go buy the Grow hood.
Go do it.
Within maybe a week or two, we'll have the FU tees. There's going to be the FU hoods. There's an FU mug, and there's an FU hat, I think. So we're waiting for all that stuff to come in. I don't know if that's going to be Black Friday stuff. I don't know where it's going to fall. Cool. Right until it all comes in. Other than that, you can just close it out.
Beautiful. Guys, thank you very much for joining us today. If you joined us live, if you're listening to the audio, again, thank you very much for listening. And on behalf of me and Dave and Jacob behind the camera, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you guys in the next one.